Behind the red brick walls of a Brooklyn high school, a respected teacher crossed a line she could never uncross. 3 students, each believing they had her heart. But when passion turned to obsession, and obsession turned to rage, only one would walk away untouched. And someone would die. You're watching True Crime Stories Arena, where hidden lives unravel in terrifying truths. Subscribe now and turn on notifications so you never miss a case that chills to the bone. Let's dive into a scandal that shattered trust, destroyed lives, and ended in murder. In the heart of Brooklyn, where the city's pulse beats through brownstone-lined streets and the distant hum of the subway, LaToya Harris navigates her daily routine. At 34, she's an English teacher at James Madison High School, a place where she channels her passion for literature into shaping young minds. Her classroom is a haven of inspiration, where students are encouraged to explore the depths of language and expression. LaToya's professional life is marked by admiration and respect. Colleagues commend her dedication, and students find solace in her guidance. Yet, beyond the school's walls, her personal life tells a different story. Married to Marcus, a long-haul trucker whose presence is as fleeting as the passing trucks on the interstate, LaToya feels the chill of a relationship that has grown cold and disconnected. Their interactions are limited to brief phone calls and occasional visits, leaving LaToya yearning for emotional intimacy and connection. Amidst this emotional void, Jamal Thompson enters LaToya's life. A 17-year-old basketball star at James Madison High, Jamal is known for his athletic prowess and charismatic presence. However, his academic performance is faltering, casting a shadow over his promising future. Recognizing his potential beyond the basketball court, LaToya offers to tutor him, aiming to bridge the gap between his athletic talents and academic responsibilities. What begins as a professional endeavor soon evolves into a complex and emotionally charged relationship. Late-night tutoring sessions become the backdrop for shared confidences and lingering glances. The boundaries between teacher and student blur, culminating in a moment of vulnerability and passion, a kiss that ignites an affair both exhilarating and perilous. Their clandestine relationship unfolds in the shadows, hidden from the scrutinizing eyes of the school and the community. For LaToya, the affair offers a reprieve from her feelings of invisibility and neglect, a rekindling of passion she thought long extinguished. For Jamal, it's a complex mix of admiration, desire, and the thrill of the forbidden. As their secret liaison deepens, the stakes escalate. The walls of secrecy begin to close in, and the consequences of their actions loom large. In the bustling corridors of James Madison High, whispers and suspicions threaten to unravel the delicate facade they've maintained. The once clear lines between right and wrong, professional and personal, become increasingly blurred, setting the stage for a narrative fraught with tension, desire, and the inevitable reckoning that follows. In the dim-lit corners of Brooklyn's school hallways, secrets often speak louder than shouts. What started as a forbidden spark between a respected teacher and her troubled student soon evolved into a wildfire, one with no clear path, no clear end, and no way out. Rashad Williams was nothing like Jamal. 16. Loud. Brazen. A star on the football team with a confidence that bordered on arrogance. He didn't care about books, or grades, or what teachers thought of him. But what Rashad did notice was attention. And LaToya Harris was suddenly giving a lot of it to someone else. He watched Jamal walk her to class after tutoring. Watched them linger in doorways a little too long. In Rashad's world, territory mattered. Respect mattered. And to him, LaToya had just become a prize. At first, it was a game. A smirk here. A wink in class. A carefully rehearsed compliment about her shoes or the way she wore her glasses. But when those efforts didn't work, Rashad turned up the heat. He started showing up during Jamal's tutoring sessions, feigning concern about his grades. He lingered after practice, offered to carry her books, made sure his voice was the last one she heard before she left campus. LaToya knew the signs. She'd taught enough years to recognize a crush, even one cloaked in bravado. But there was something different about Rashad, something dangerous. He wasn't seeking comfort like Jamal, he wanted conquest. Attention. And more than anything, he wanted to take something away from Jamal. Then came the argument, Jamal and Rashad, fists clenched in the boys' locker room. A heated exchange about boundaries, about respect. Words were shouted. Lies were traded. And in the haze of confusion and guilt, LaToya did something she could never take back. She let Rashad in. It was quicker. Louder. More reckless. Nothing about it resembled the cautious tenderness she had with Jamal. With Rashad, it was survival, her way of regaining control in a life that was spiraling out of it. But the spiral hadn't finished twisting. Andre Mitchell was never part of the plan. 18, a senior. Quiet. Observant. A poet in a world that preferred touchdowns and three-pointers. Andre wasn't like the others. He stayed after class not to flirt, but to talk. To ask questions about James Baldwin. To discuss the loneliness in Maya Angelou's verses. To understand why LaToya kept a framed quote from Zora Neale Hurston on her desk. With him, there was no chase, only connection. They sat in silence some days, sharing stories about growing up in broken homes, about teachers who had once saved them. LaToya spoke in ways she hadn't dared with Jamal or Rashad. There was no performative affection here, only truth. And truth, when fed long enough, can become intimacy. Then, inevitably, it became something more. A touch of the hand during a shared poem. A tear she didn't mean for him to see. A kiss that she didn't plan but didn't resist. 3 boys. 3 secrets. Each offering LaToya something different. Jamal gave her attention. Rashad gave her power. Andre gave her depth. Together, they made her feel whole. But together, they also built the perfect storm. The walls around her private world began to close in. Rumors slipped between locker doors and class group chats. Teachers noticed strange glances. Friends became wary. And still, LaToya convinced herself she was in control. But the truth about fire is, it doesn't stay where you light it. It spreads. And the embers were already burning. In stories like this, secrets are never secrets for long. LaToya Harris had built her world carefully, one hidden meeting at a time, one lie stacked upon another. But the thing about glass castles is they glimmer only until the first crack. And those cracks had begun to show. It started with Jamal. Once her quiet refuge, he now noticed the way her texts came slower, colder. The way she canceled their sessions last minute, offering flimsy excuses about department meetings or family emergencies. But the final blow came one rainy Thursday afternoon. He saw her. LaToya. With Rashad. Laughing. Leaning. Whispering in a corner of the gym no teacher should be near after hours. Jamal didn't say a word. He didn't have to. His eyes caught hers, and the hurt in them said everything. Elsewhere, Andre heard the whispers. Hallway gossip moves like wildfire in high school, especially when it smells like scandal. She's with both of them, someone muttered by the vending machine. Nah, I heard she's seeing 3. Andre stopped writing poetry. He stopped smiling, too. Each boy thought he was the only one. Now, none of them were sure. But what they all felt was rage. Jamal began trailing LaToya after school, his once loving eyes now shaded with suspicion. He waited outside her classroom. Followed her car at a distance. Rashad didn't hide his jealousy. He showed up during her planning periods unannounced, demanded attention, started fights in the locker room, always loud, always territorial. Andre grew silent. Withdrawn. His journals grew darker. Pages filled with questions that bled into obsession. Why her? Why us? LaToya was unraveling. The thrill that once ignited her veins now felt like fire under her skin. Every bell that rang startled her. Every knock on her door made her heart leap in dread. The boys were no longer boys, they were shadows, haunting her every step. And as the walls of secrecy caved in around her, LaToya Harris realized something chilling. This wasn't passion anymore. This was panic. And panic never ends quietly. There's always a moment, just before a storm, when the air changes. A moment when time slows, when breath catches, and the world holds its silence, waiting. That moment came in the school parking lot on a humid Thursday afternoon. The bell had rung. Students had left. But not all. LaToya Harris was walking to her car when Jamal emerged from the shadows. His face wasn't angry, it was broken. Who else? He asked. No anger in his voice. Just pain. Is it Rashad? Andre? Both? LaToya's lips parted, but before words could find their way, Rashad stepped out from between two parked cars, fists already clenched. You got something to say, Jamal, he barked. Yeah, Jamal shot back. I've got a lot to say. Tension cracked the silence like lightning. And then came the third shadow. Andre. He stood a few feet away, his eyes wide with disbelief, watching the scene unfold like a nightmare he'd never imagined would be real. LaToya looked from one boy to the next, 3 hearts she'd entangled, 3 storms she'd helped create. Then chaos struck. Rashad lunged first. A fist. A shout. Jamal swung back. They crashed against a car hood, metal groaning under the weight of betrayal and fury. Andre yelled, begged them to stop, but when he stepped in, Rashad shoved him hard. The scuffle turned into a brawl. A security camera caught the next moment in grim detail. Rashad spotted the rusted metal pipe lying near the dumpster. He didn't hesitate. He grabbed it, raised it, and brought it down on Jamal's skull. The sound, a sickening crack. Jamal collapsed instantly. Blood pooled beneath him. LaToya screamed. Andre snapped. He lunged, grabbed the same pipe with trembling hands, and in a single, blinding flash of rage, he struck Rashad across the face. Again. And again. By the time police sirens pierced the air, Rashad lay lifeless in a puddle of blood and gravel. Jamal was rushed to the hospital, barely breathing. LaToya. She was found sitting on the pavement, blood on her hands, eyes blank, whispering a name no one could make out. Brooklyn had seen heartbreak before. But nothing like this. The blood had barely dried before the headlines rolled in. Brooklyn teacher at center of student love triangle murder. Tragedy at James Madison High. 3 boys, 1 affair, and the city left reeling. The story was too scandalous, too tragic to ignore, and Brooklyn, a borough used to noise and news, fell into stunned silence. The arrest came within hours. LaToya Harris, handcuffed and hollow-eyed, was escorted out of her brownstone by NYPD detectives. The charge? Contributing to the delinquency of minors. Later, more would follow. Inside the precinct, she didn't speak. Didn't fight. Just sat. And cried. Across town, her husband Marcus, the long-haul trucker who'd barely unpacked his latest route, filed for divorce the moment the news hit his ears. Reporters camped outside their home. Outside the school. Outside the hospital. James Madison High shut its doors for the first time in over a decade. Teachers were questioned. Students were shaken. Guidance counselors were overwhelmed. Parents wanted answers. The community wanted justice. And the media? They wanted a story. But this wasn't a story. This was real. Rashad Williams was 16 when he died. The autopsy confirmed blunt force trauma to the head. His funeral was a swirl of grief, anger, and unanswered questions. Jamal Thompson survived the attack, but barely. Doctors managed to save his life, but not without consequence. The brain damage was irreversible. His basketball dreams? Gone. He would never step on a court again, not as an athlete, not as the boy he used to be. Andre Mitchell, the quiet poet, the one who never fought back, was now behind bars. Charged with manslaughter. Sentenced as a minor. Juvenile detention until age 21. He writes less poetry now. But he still writes. And LaToya? Her teaching license was revoked. Her mugshot spread across the internet like wildfire. She suffered a breakdown within weeks of her arrest, hospitalized for psychiatric evaluation. The woman once praised for molding young minds had become a cautionary tale, a headline, a symbol of what happens when boundaries dissolve and power is abused. Brooklyn would move on. The world always does. But for those left behind, those who bled, and broke, and buried, the echoes would never fade. The courtroom was packed, press, parents, former students, and a sea of silent stares. The case of the people versus LaToya Harris had become a national spectacle, not just for what happened, but for who it involved. At the center stood a woman once respected, now vilified. The prosecution wasted no time. They painted LaToya as a calculated predator. A woman in a position of power who used that influence to manipulate vulnerable minors for her own gratification. The assistant district attorney called it an egregious betrayal of trust and a moral failure disguised as affection. They showed text messages, late-night exchanges riddled with romantic undertones. They showed footage, security cameras catching her in intimate moments with multiple students. And they read from Rashad's locker journal, crude sketches, obsessive notes, and one haunting line scrawled across the back page. If I can't have her, no one can. But the defense pushed back. They described a woman unraveling. A life of emotional abandonment. A marriage where she was a ghost with a pulse. They called expert witnesses, psychologists who testified about emotional disassociation, depression, and trauma. They portrayed LaToya as not predatory, but broken. Her lawyer said, she didn't seek power, she sought connection. She didn't pray, she reached. And in reaching, she crossed a line that destroyed everyone. But sympathy only stretched so far. Marcus Harris took the stand. A strong man brought to tears. I was gone a lot, he admitted. But I never imagined. Never in my life did I think my wife would find comfort in boys the age of our godson. Jamal's mother collapsed in sobs during her testimony. He was a child, she cried. Now he can't walk without help. Can't speak clearly. Can't dream. The jury deliberated for just under 4 hours. Guilty. Multiple counts of indecent contact with a minor, contributing to the delinquency of minors, and gross misconduct in a public institution. The sentence, 25 years in a New York State prison. Parole eligibility after 15. The courtroom was still. LaToya didn't cry. She just stared ahead, face blank, as if still trying to rewrite the story in her head. But the consequences didn't end with her sentencing. Across Brooklyn, the school district launched a district-wide policy overhaul. Mandatory ethics training. Anonymous reporting hotlines. Revised boundaries training for all faculty and staff. And the country watched. News outlets debated the case nightly. Talk shows dissected the affair with clinical precision. Experts weighed in on the psychology of authority, grooming, and blurred lines. LaToya Harris had once been a name on a classroom door. Now, she was a case study. A cautionary tale. And for many, a reminder. When power is abused, no matter how quietly, it leaves a roar behind. In a cold, gray cell upstate, far from the classroom she once commanded and the chaos she helped unleash, LaToya Harris sits in silence. Gone are the polished blazers, the classroom novels, the stern yet respected tone of a teacher with authority. What remains now is a woman stripped bare, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. The silence in her cell is not peaceful. It's heavy. Echoing. Unforgiving. She writes now. Letters to Marcus. To Jamal. To Rashad's grieving mother. To Andre, wherever he is. But no one writes back. Each envelope returns unopened, marked, refused, unknown recipient, or worst of all, nothing at all. Her words live only on paper, like the poetry she once adored. But unlike poetry, there is no metaphor here. Only regret. She replays the days leading up to the unraveling like a film in her mind, over and over, until the faces blur and her memory begins to feel more like fiction than fact. In the prison yard, she walks alone. The other inmates keep their distance. Some whisper. Others stare. They've heard the stories. The teacher. The boys. The blood. She used to believe she had control. Over her life. Her choices. Her heart. Now she knows better. And the echoes of what she destroyed, young lives, dreams, futures, follow her in every footstep. Somewhere, Jamal learns to speak again. Andre sits in therapy, counting the years. Rashad's name is etched into a headstone visited every Sunday. And LaToya? She counts time too, by meals, by mail, by silence. 3 boys. 1 woman. A tangle of secrets. A flood of choices. It was never about love. Not real love. It was about loneliness. About control. About needing something, anything, to feel alive. But when need turns to possession, when boundaries disappear beneath the weight of desire, the cost is never shared equally. It's paid in blood, in futures stolen, in names whispered long after the noise fades. LaToya Harris didn't just break the rules. She broke people. And in stories like this, there's no redemption arc. No ribbon-tied ending. Only consequence. Only silence. Only legacy. LaToya Harris was a teacher. A mentor. A wife. But behind the closed doors of a Brooklyn classroom, she became something else entirely. Her story didn't end with a lesson, it ended with a life taken, futures ruined, and trust broken beyond repair. What do you think? Was this a crime of passion, or calculated manipulation? Should LaToya have received a longer sentence? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget. Subscribe to True Crime Stories Arena, where we uncover the darkness behind every smile and the truth beneath every secret. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, and stay curious.